Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to the chemo slash cancer Q&A video. I don't really know what I'm going to title this yet, but something along those lines. Today we are discussing all things chemo related and therefore cancer related. Recently I posted it on my Instagram and I posted a question box just asking you guys any questions that you might have on chemo and cancer and that sort of idea. So before we get into it, I'm going to introduce kind of myself and what cancer I had and what chemotherapy treatment I went through. So in March of 2023, I was diagnosed with stage 1 germ cell cancer, which stemmed in one of my ovaries. If you want to know more about how I found out that sort of idea, go check out my I Have Cancer video, because that is the whole story time on all the things leading up to my cancer diagnosis and all that stuff. So if you want to know more, go check out that video. So like I said, I had stage 1 germ cell cancer. So then towards the end of May, early June, I started my chemo treatment, which consisted of 3 drugs. And now I actually know how to pronounce these drugs. So I had etoposide, cisplatin, and bleomycin. So I went through 4 rounds of this treatment, which involved 3 weeks each round. The first week consisted of getting daily cisplatin and etoposide, and on Tuesdays I would always get bleomycin. So this continued for 3 rounds, and then on my 4th round we actually decided to take out the bleomycin drug. That was because my pulmonary test came back not great, and my doctor suggested that it would be best to remove this drug that impacts my lung capabilities. I think that's all I have to say, really. If you have any questions about my treatment plan, let me know in the comments and I will try my best to answer them. Also, before I get into any of this, I am not a doctor. These are all my own experiences and opinions, and that is that. Now let's get into the actual questions. A common question I actually got was, does receiving chemotherapy hurt, or is it just the after effects? So the process of actually receiving chemotherapy is fairly painless. The only thing I can think of that might hurt is getting your actual IV, but it feels just like any other IV if you've ever had one. And the chemotherapy, you really don't notice it going in. It's just like when you get saline through your IV, that sort of idea. I would say towards the end of a treatment day, that's when I would start to get the effects. So I would lose my appetite usually within the first few hours, that sort of idea. But actually getting your chemotherapy is a painless process, which is quite nice. At least for me it was. My sweet cousin asked me a question. If you could go back to day 1 of chemo, what advice would you give yourself? Day 1 chemo, Jess, was so naive, and it breaks my heart a little bit of what I had experienced after that. But I think the main things that I would tell myself is to just be patient with yourself and also be patient with your support people. It is just such a hard process to go through, going through chemotherapy, and it will be the hardest thing you probably ever have to do. You just have to be so patient with yourself, with how you're feeling, with the side effects, everything. You just have to be patient. Also, you have to be very patient with your support people, because at the end of the day, they just want to help you, even though sometimes it can get a little bit frustrating, and it's only frustrating because you're so sick. Like, when you're sick, the last thing you want to do is even speak. But you have to be patient and you have to try, even when you don't want to speak. I actually had someone who works in healthcare ask a question, and they asked, what's the most helpful things that I can do for you as a patient? That's a really good question. It's a very thoughtful question. My experience with going through chemo treatments and everything, I had the best nurses. They were so patient and helpful and supportive, and they really just took the time to sit and listen to me and listen to how I was feeling, and that was a game changer for me. It made the hospital a little bit of a nicer place for me to be. When I was literally at my worst, I remember just saying, I wish I was at the hospital, just because I know that when I'm there, they care about me, they listen to me, and they tried their absolute best to help me with all my side effects. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I appreciated most, was just how they sat down and would take the time to listen to me, even though I know they had very busy days and they were constantly, trying to help all these other patients. But feeling like you mattered in that moment was just a game changer. So I would probably say that's the thing you can do, is just sit and listen, which seems like a very basic thing, but honestly, the care I got in those chemo suites were like nothing I've ever experienced before. They were absolute angels in there. I like this question a lot. What did you learn about yourself through this journey? I learned a lot, good and bad. I think the main thing I learned through this was the realization that I am so capable. Now that I've gone through this, I can look back at so many things in my life and be like, yeah, I am strong, I'm capable, I can do so much. After doing that, I feel almost invincible. I feel like I could literally do anything, which might not be true, but in my brain, that's what it feels like. Another thing I would say I learned about myself was that I'm so much more than my hair. I know that sounds really silly and obvious, but when you're a young woman growing up in the society we grow up in, losing my hair was something that I thought would be so hard, and so, you know, I would hate to look at myself, that sort of idea. But actually shaving my head was so empowering, and whenever I would go out to like the mall or someplace, not the hospital, it didn't happen very often, but when I did, I felt very almost powerful, just being able to, you know, rock the confidence of a bald head, which it's just a really surreal experience. I mean, I don't want to be bald for the rest of my life. I do want my hair to grow back, and I do want to have long hair again, but it was a really cool experience to feel that power of being bald. And, you know, sometimes people would look at me, but mostly I think when people looked at me, they were like, holy crap, she's strong, or, you know, something along those lines, which it's a pretty good feeling, I will say. Next question is, was it easier than you expected? What helped most to support you? It was definitely harder than I expected. I thought I would have, you know, a bad few days after my full weeks of treatment, and then, you know, on the weeks where I only had one treatment, I would be feeling a lot better. But unfortunately, that's not really how it went for me. Personally, when I had treatment, I was quite sick until typically the day before my next treatment. So every time I started to feel better, I got knocked down with chemo again, which it was really frustrating and disappointing, to be honest, because I was expecting to have, you know, some more better days, but that just wasn't the case for me. So yeah, I would say it was harder than I expected, which is probably not the answer you want. Honestly, what supported me most was my parents. I don't know how anyone gets through something like this alone. My heart goes out to you if you have to do that. But yeah, I mean, there were days where I couldn't feed myself, and I couldn't run a bath for myself, and I couldn't do all these things. There was even times where I got so sick that I needed someone to help me walk up the stairs because I was so faint and ill and tired and sore that I couldn't walk up the stairs by myself. Like, that's how bad I got. I mean, will this happen to everyone? Probably not. Some people will get chemo and be totally fine. But personally, that was just not the case for me, and I could not have done it without my parents. Like, no way. I also think I kind of traumatized them through all this, so I do apologize for that. I feel like this is kind of a fun question because it's different for everyone again, but what foods could you keep down during chemo? What could you not stand to taste or smell? So foods that I could eat that I survived on through chemo, if I didn't have these, it would not have been good. Included Kraft dinner. Kraft dinner saved me when I was at the very worst. My brother made me a bowl of Kraft dinner, and it was the only thing I was able to eat in like the last 5 days or something crazy like that. Fruit salad was also really delicious. Even though you have to be kind of careful with fruits, they say sometimes it's not the best to eat fruit while you're going through chemo. I was fine, but it's not for everyone. Smoothies were huge. When I couldn't eat or drink anything, I usually would rely on a smoothie. Angel food cake. Weirdly enough, towards the end of treatment, I remember eating a lot of angel food cake when I wasn't feeling great. And cereal. I relied so much on cereal, specifically Rice Krispies when I wasn't feeling the best. Next question I have here is, will you ever get cancer again if this is just a preventative chemo? So if you didn't know, my chemo that I did was mostly preventative, just because we didn't know if with my surgical spill there was microscopic cells of cancer left, and that's why we had to do chemo. Hopefully I never get cancer again. Hopefully this is one-off and I never had to go through this again, and it's just done, dealt with. But just like in anything in life, you can never have a guarantee. you just pray for the best and keep living life as if you are fine. And that's my plan, at least. In terms of, you know, scans and checkups and all that sort of idea, I do have my first doctor's appointment again next week, and we will, you know, have a better plan by then. But we do hope to do scans every 3 months, whether this is a CT scan or just an ultrasound, something along those lines, just to make sure there's nothing new popping up. That's all we really have planned so far. I think the last question I'm going to talk about is what helped raise your spirits most when you were really struggling? When I'm thinking back to my chemo experience, there were really 2 times throughout it where I really struggled, where I didn't want to keep going. I wanted it to be over. I just mentally was not doing well. And honestly, the things that helped me most was getting out of the house when I could. So one weekend, I think we went out to my grandpa's cottage, and even just going out for, you know, 3-4 hours made such a big difference. Coming home, I was, you know, a lot more positive. I felt just a clearer mind. I felt better. It was honestly a game changer. So yeah, getting out of the house really helped whenever I could physically. Another thing that really helped was socializing. So there were a few times where a few of my friends would come down and visit, and it was just so nice to have someone to talk to who's not family. I love you guys so much, but sometimes I just want to gossip and talk about something that's not cancer related, which is what your friends are for, let's be real. So that helped so much. And it's funny because when they're there, I don't think they realized how much that changed me, but it really does just completely change the way I felt, the way I thought about things, and it just made me feel a lot clearer-minded, which is really all you can ask for when you're going through chemo. But yeah, I think those are all the questions I'm going to answer. If you have more, please do leave a comment, and I will try to answer a few. Thank you so much for letting me just chat and ramble for like the last, I don't know how many minutes. But also thank you for letting me share this journey and being so positive and supportive throughout it. I really do appreciate it. And I do hope these videos help, you know, even just one person who might be struggling or having to go through this as well, just to know you're not alone. And it sucks, but eventually you'll get through it and you'll be done and you'll start to feel better. Because when you're going through it, all you want to know is that eventually you will feel better. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you also for asking all your questions. And yeah, see you guys all in the next one. Bye guys!